FloTrack here with Coach Mitchell Baker. Just won the Big East Championship on the women's side. Coach, tell me a little bit about what you saw at your women today.
An incredible battle with Providence. They've been kind of chipping away. There was a little bit of a gap between us and them maybe a month ago, so as close as they got 2 weeks ago, I felt like it was going to be a toss-up. I just didn't know it was going to be a toss-up at every position all the way through 7. So really fortunate to win a lot of those small battles, so key in smaller fields, and hats off to them. They just ran an awesome race, and we were really fortunate to sneak out the win.
We were speaking with Chloe after the race, and she said, you know, obviously she would like to have won,
Yeah.
but the team battle was so much more important. Every point counts.
Yeah.
When you're going into a team battle that you know is going to be close, how do you kind of coach the women and just make sure that they're executing and just make sure that no one's kind of going over their head?
Yeah, I think when you're in a bigger field, you can get on a roll and catch people that may not be as obvious head-to-head battles, but you can kind of catch them as momentum. And in this race, when there's some space, it sometimes feels like you can't catch people. The gap's too big, but a lot of times it's just about trying to chop it in half or chop it into a third and keep climbing, because if you catch them, it's worth 5 in a big field, and it's obviously won the day, but when you're scoring in the 30s, you know, 1 point is a massive amount. And I think, you know, the tough thing is in bigger races you can't always find your teammates very well to key off them, and fortunately we were able to kind of finally bring together a little bit of a team race in that 4 through 8 sort of runner category. They just hadn't really been able to find each other in big races yet, or maybe be in the right spot. So we try to capitalize on a smaller field and say, okay, in this type of field we actually can probably, you guys can find each other a bit easier. So certainly if you are a team that has the ability to have some runners close together, then this is the type of race that you have to do it, because it's a huge advantage. Yeah.
What kind of things were you telling your runners, seeing the race go out that tight, that close? What were you telling them as they were coming through?
Well, there's enough spots for fans to gather up that you can tell that, you know, it's hard to kind of keep your adrenaline in check when you're running through these sort of funnels of people cheering pretty loud. And so when I was in some of the quieter moments, just trying to get them to relax a little bit. When you're looking around and you know that every single person around you is important to try to win, it can feel like you're either trying to hang on or trying to beat them at any moment, where there's some periods where you just need to kind of like ride the wave a little bit. So I think they did a good job of staying calm. And then the back half of the race, there were a few athletes, especially in our clump, in that back group, that looked like they were starting to let their teammates get away from them, and just trying to get them to relax and just tuck themselves right back in. Sometimes you know you're important, but you feel like you're the weak leg in a moment. You start to sort of rationalize that it's okay. But, you know, one of the gals, Barrett, Justema, she looked like she was on the ropes at the 5K and kind of just like hung in there and snuck back into that crowd, and then climbed all the way through our group. So it's a great lesson for, you can feel like you're really in a tough spot, but if you just sort of stay calm and try to find those people that you have the greatest reference against, which is your teammates, and say, I train with them, I know I can get back to them, it can sometimes help you through those really tough moments.
Now the attention shifts to Mid-Atlantic Regionals.
Yeah.
West Virginia kind of came out of nowhere recently, but obviously you guys just need to worry about yourselves. How do you kind of keep that in the background, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Villanova's improving. I don't think we've seen the best of Princeton yet. They're a really talented, good team. The Penn State team has been running great. It's a sort of region where if you're not careful, you can get 3rd or 4th, and then we probably have enough points, but you just never really want to play that sort of roulette. So, you know, you just really want to try to be top 2 and just take the drama out of it. I think the toughest thing is just trying to make those final decisions if people are a little bit dinged up or people get a little bit sick, of like how to manage that, because you don't want to get people off their rhythm. You know, they're not totally 110 hurdlers that need to race all the time, but it's also, you know, when their teammates are out there running hard and they don't get that stimulus for the NCAA, it's as much, you need the stimulus as it can also damage you a little bit. So kind of just managing the excitement of trying to qualify and also trying to treat it like just any other race, but it obviously means a lot. It's like a race that means so much, but there's no prize. That's a difficult mindset to have. It's like, I'm running for something, but it's not today. We would focus so much on like trying to be present and run for the moment, and then you say, but this moment is for a different moment. That's sort of a little bit of a mind, not tease, but a riddle. And so I think managing that is, hopefully we have enough of our athletes with some of that experience, but a lot of our new athletes, especially the older ones, they had great team experiences in their undergrad. They had some great teams, but they may not have been in the situation where they're on a team that like should qualify. And this "should" is such a dangerous word, so we'll just try to go in and pick kind of the not necessarily a conservative race strategy, but the one that lends to our strengths. And so if we can get better that day, then hopefully then we're better a week later.
One of the things I noticed about your group, and no disrespect to any other teams you see out there, but it seems like the Georgetown women are really like tight. Like they're family. They kind of just like rally around each other, especially at the finish line. You know, how do you build that culture, especially in your instance specifically?
I was saying this on the Big East conversation afterwards. I think the pandemic did a lot for the women's program. You know, there had been a lot of coaching changes, and coming out of that, it felt like a lot of the pressure that high achievers put on themselves to see the results show up on race day, they oftentimes get further from that end result than they want because they feel like it means so much. It's so much, their identity's wrapped so much up in that 5 minutes or 20-minute type of race. So I think we had a lot of gratitude to just being able to compete. You know, Georgetown didn't have to bring us back. A lot of schools like us didn't. Not all the other students came back. So that first semester back when I took over that September, we weren't in session, and then they had the winter NCAA meet. We kind of won in a nail biter over UConn that year, but the Big East was a little bit down, and so the NCAA kind of gave us a berth, even though there was no qualifying. So it was a little bit of a gift. And then we went to that meet we were the only team in the NCAA that didn't have a fall semester with each other. We came back in January and had 7 or 10 days in quarantine in the room that they couldn't leave. And then 6 weeks later at Oklahoma State, which was supposed to be this incredibly difficult course, which it was, I think we passed 4 or 5 teams in the last K to get 18th. So I think it sort of changed the women's mindset of like, maybe the preparation doesn't have to be perfect. And what was special about that first group is when they ran the pre-meet and everyone else is freaking out about the hills, they named every hill. Some of it was irreverent names, some of it was just sort of funny names. And it was almost like it kind of helped them click off that day and sort of bring down the challenge of the day to like a level that they could kind of like chew one piece at a time. And that group, I think, really sort of set the stage for the last 4 or 5 years, kind of perfecting that, like, yeah, the races matter, testing yourself matters. It's a reflection of your performance and your commitment to what you're doing and ability to execute, but you're still going to be loved afterwards, regardless of the outcome. And so I think it's almost like less pressure to perform because they know that they're still going to be teammates and care about each other whatever happens. And so they end up sort of running more free, having more fun. I think that year we got 10th. We had 2 of our scores with the flu, ran 6-7. Another girl was running injured, we didn't know it. And they were dancing to the 10 afterwards. And you see a lot of glum faces. It's the NCAA, everyone has these big expectations. And we didn't have our best day, but we still got 10th, which was sort of outstripped our performance or our rankings. I think there's been a lot of moments like that where they can see that, oh, I actually didn't have my best stuff, but I still brought everything that I did have, and the outcome was really good. And I think we track a lot of things like how many NCAA chances do we have at the track nationals, those sort of things. Like, it's very, very high percentage of the women that get into those environments end up outstripping their like season rankings, our team rankings, those sort of things. So I think there's just an element of treating each race as if it's this own important thing that you really need to capture everything from it. But a lot of the pressure people put on themselves before the race pushes them away from their top level. So we focus a lot on what we can do right afterwards. Like what lessons can we learn? And that's where every school's a little bit different, but we have a lot of people that try really hard in the class, really hard on standardized tests and those sort of things. And so if they become better critical thinkers over the course of college, they need to leverage that into sort of logically looking at their performance instead of being more and more focused on all the perfect preparation that they're doing and sort of squeezing it to death. Actually saying, I can take a step back and detach myself from that end result and just get better the next time. And then it feels less like that one race is their entire identity and more that it's just a little tick mark on this, journey towards just getting better. And, it's always a test now. We have all these new grad students, but what was really interesting, we've had a lot of grad students the last few years that had coaching changes in their undergrad. It almost kind of gave them the idea, I've got this COVID season or whatever, maybe I'll go someplace else. They loved their undergrad experience, but they were looking for something different. It came to us. But for the 5 women that joined us this year, I recruited 5 years ago. And they chose somewhere different. Georgetown was in a different place. They were in a different place. They wanted something different for grad school, but they kind of knew what the program was becoming. And so and they selected that in a different way than maybe past generations of women would have come for. They kind of knew what they're getting into, so their buy-in has, you hope for that, but it's not always the case. You know, a lot of times when people have 1 year, they're kind of in it for themselves. I'm trying to make up for this past 4 years. I didn't get what I wanted. I'm going to come in and get what I want. And I think they've done a great job of saying, I just want to be part of something bigger than myself, and that if I can't have my best day, I'm going to propel someone else to have their best day. And I think that's really hard to, in a sport that feels so selfish. It's cool that cross country starts the year, because you can kind of take a step back from those individual pieces and say, you know, 10 years from now, if I'm calling you up and talking about which place I got in the Big East, then maybe the relationship we built wasn't the right one.
Yeah.
But if it's, I called you up to look after you because you were sick, or you had something happen in your life or whatever, those are the sorts of things that we're saying. We're establishing those types of relationships, and hopefully that the race can reflect that joy and the excitement to run for each other. And you know, every year you're trying to find some version of that, but I think that this group in the last few years have really pushed that forward a lot. So,
Thanks, Coach.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
sorry.